ko Karen taku inoa no Havelock North aho. I'm the secondary advisor for physical education in New Zealand, so coming to you from Havelock North. We've got the 3 subject associations in the Health and Physical Education curriculum: Physical Education New Zealand, New Zealand Health Education Association, Education Outdoors New Zealand, who have joined with Sport NZ, and in particular the Healthy Active Learning Initiative, to put on this series of the weekly presentations on topics that are relevant and should be of interest to teachers and school leaders in primary and intermediate schools. So I'm really pleased to be introducing my colleague, Marisa Mackay, who's introducing the MoveWell resource to you. Marisa is the Primary and Intermediate Schools Advisor at Physical Education New Zealand, and in her role she supports and inspires teachers to design and teach quality physical education programs that suit Akonga. She also writes regular column, which is available to you all on the year 1 to 8 section of our website. So welcome, Marisa, and I'm sure everyone is going to get a lot out of this session. Over to you.
Thank you very much. We will just start with karakia. So, me inoi tātou, kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa pōna mō te moana. He huarahi mā tātou i te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou, ia tātou katoa, āmine. Now, you'll just have to bear with me. I've just learnt this cool thing that I can do with the sharing screen, but I haven't learnt how to do it seamlessly. So hopefully this works. Now you should be able to see my face as well as the screen. So hopefully that's come through. Nā mihi nui kia koutou katoa, ko mangare toku manga, ko tamaki toku awa, ko hunter toku iwi, and ko makai toku hapu. No Australia toku whānau aho, no Aotearoa aho ki tamaki makoro toko kāinga inai nei. Ko kai whakako te ao kori toku mahi, ko Marisa Mackay toku ingoa, no reira tina koutou, tina koutou, tina koutou katoa. Thank you, Karen, for the introduction. So my name is Marisa and I'm the Primary and Intermediate Advisor for Physical Education New Zealand, a role that's only really been around for the last 12 months. Physical Education New Zealand's been around for a long time, 80 plus years, but mostly in the secondary space. So our voice and our presence within primary and intermediate is a new thing. I have been in the professional development space for quite a while. I'm a primary trained teacher, and so I really love what I do around physical education, and have spent the last 6 months working over the country from Whangarei right down to Dunedin presenting MoveWell. So I'm really pleased to be able to share the resource with those people who weren't able to make physical workshops and days with you this afternoon. So today in our session we're going to do 3 main things. First of all, the first part really is around understanding MoveWell's pedagogy. So this is more than just a games resource, it's more than just a packet of ideas that you can kind of whip out with you, but it's really well grounded. So we're going to have a look at that. We're also going to go through the layout and structure so that that all kind of makes sense. And then we're going to have a quick chat around how we can actually use it in practice to make sure that it's being used in a quality way and that the experiences we're providing the students are quality experiences as well. So thank you all for your ideas that have come through around your go-to games in the chat box. So the next question for the chat box today is, when you think about those games that you like to play, that are your go-tos, what are all the skills that can be developed through those games? So if you just file a few of those through the chat box and have a little think about what are all of the kinds of skills that might be developed in the game that students can access some learning around. use a couple of them as examples while they're coming through. So Ripper Rugby was one that was popped out there nice and early. So in terms of some of the classic skills that come through there, we know that there's obviously throwing and catching in terms of throwing a rugby ball. There's being able to avoid and also being able to target people. So lots of really practical skills and physical skills. But we know that games like this offer a wide variety of skills. At the moment, what we tend to see is our games really focus on the physical side of things. Another one of the games that was suggested there was Paper, Scissors, Rock, which is a really neat game. It's also in MoveWell, so that's a neat thing there. And so games like that can teach a whole bunch of different ways of competing with each other and tactical skills that are beyond just physical skills. But when we think about these games and we start listing all these skills, we can become really overwhelmed by all of them. And sometimes we're not quite sure where to start or where to focus. And if it's overwhelming for us as a teacher trying to address all of the skills, then it's going to be overwhelming for the kids as well. So it's really important to kind of simplify things, to narrow things down a little bit and be really explicit about what you are teaching and what skills you want the students to get out of it, rather than just expecting them to learn it by osmosis because they're playing the game, so they'll learn how to throw and catch because they're already playing the game. Are there any skills coming through there, Karen?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of skills coming through, to be honest, Marisa. But what you'll find really exciting to see is we've also got not just the physical skills, but the personal skills, the interpersonal skills, the cooperative. And I saw the word failure come through as well, which is fantastic. That growth mindset that we want students to have, and of course can have in a number of ways, and if they can feel confident through the activities they're doing, which they do it well in our PE lessons, then that would be exciting to see that happening. I can see resilience in there, relating to others, interpersonal skills, social and relationships, enjoyment, collaboration, problem solving, spatial awareness, as well as skills, accuracy, and then of course the friendship and communication as well. So a lot of really good ideas in there.
Awesome. Yeah, really thrilled to hear the wide band of skills that are being identified. And again, when we talk about that resilience or we talk about that failure, we want to take the opportunity to be explicit about that and not just expect the kids to learn about failure because their team loses and so they experience failure, but actually how can we support them and develop some learning around failure so that they get a really in-depth understanding of it rather than just, it happening to them so they understand. So in MoveWell, when we are talking about skill, we're talking about the holistic development of skills, which you all seem to be on the same page with. So it does talk about physical skill development, but it's also really explicit around social skills and game skills development as well. And it's not just about learning these physical skills. MoveWell is a real move away from developing fundamental skills in isolation, because we know that the research actually shows that that is really ineffective in terms of developing students' ability to apply those skills. So if we isolate them and we just have a drill around throwing and catching, it doesn't mean that those students are physically going to be able to throw and catch in a game situation. And so what we want to do is make all of those contexts and situations really purposeful for them so they start seeing how to employ it. So it's really about skills in context and developing these skills in and when the need arises in game situations. All right, so MoveWell itself has been developed by a team of New Zealand academics. This is a Kiwi resource written by Kiwi New Zealand education academics for Kiwi teachers. So it couldn't be any more, masterpiece for our corner of the world. As it was mentioned, it's a collaborative piece drawn across Sport New Zealand, ACC, Ministry of Education, the University of Auckland and ourselves, Physical Education New Zealand. and it really supports the development of all skills through the game-centered approach. As I've mentioned, it's a shift away from learning those skills in isolation, but learning them in a holistic way, which is generally through play, because we know that's how our kids move. They play when we want them to, and they play when we don't. So it's about using those opportunities there. It's a real move away from teacher-led to teacher as facilitator, and taking the pressure away from teachers to having to know everything and explain everything and be in charge of everything, to actually allowing students to have more ability and say in how the games play and evolve, and the teacher becoming the facilitator of that learning in that situation. The bottom line is that through physical education and with the support of MoveWell, we want kids to develop the confidence and the competence to play these games and to feel success by developing a range of skills. And so it comes across really for anyone that's in that kind of neck of the woods. Now, it's really important to know that what it's not. So MoveWell will not become the only tool in your PE toolkit. So it's not to say that your fundamental movement skills book, your Kiwi decks, any kind of games that you find online, it's not to say that these are no longer relevant, but it is to say that this is the newest piece out there, so it's quite exciting. But when we look at quality use of resources, we start to critique about actually which is the best resource for us to use and how are we going to find the ways that are going to fit best. So this doesn't become the only thing and everything else is kind of out the door. It's also not your yearly plan in a book, so it's not designed to become your new planning format that you pick up and kind of work through the game sections over the year. And it's not really, in its true sense, designed to be taught as the game categories. What we do understand is that that may be a step in a shift in practice in terms of saying, okay, maybe for next term we're going to have a look at the invasion game section and work our way through that and have a look at it. And that's not to say that that's not a nice step in the journey in terms of shifting and changing practice. But the ultimate outcome for MoveWell is that we start to pick and choose based on our kids' needs. So we may take some invasion games, we may take some cooperative games, and we may use some games from some other resources and blend them all together and use them all at the same time. Now, getting to the really important part of MoveWell, it's set out and designed in a very similar way to the New Zealand curriculum. The front end of this book is really packed with a lot of important information around its pedagogical approach, but it's quite easy to surpass all of this kind of stuff and go straight to the games. So we are going to spend a little bit of time on this today, just having a look at the 5 principles that define the approach to MoveWell. So there are 5, and the first one there is about the importance of playing games. And this really comes down to the nuts and bolts. If our kids aren't playing and they're not involved in the gameplay, then we haven't got the opportunity to emphasize and support and start instigating some learning from that. Now, physical education is supposed to be the fun curriculum area where kids get involved. And so we need the kids to be playing and we need to give them time to play to do that. So that is the first principle, that is the most important one. We then flow on to 4 other principles which really come back to teachers and the importance of the role of the teacher in that. The first being about teachers designing the game context to meet students' needs. Also teachers using really good pedagogy. The 4th one we're really familiar with in all other areas of curriculum around fostering personal, social and cultural identity, and that doesn't look any different in physical education either. And then lastly, we also want to specifically develop that game playing ability. So all of those strategies and skills that allow them to play games and to be involved. Now, rather than listen to me over the next 10 minutes, talk about these, we're going to go into some breakout rooms, 5 breakout rooms, and hopefully when you get into a room, it will tell you what number room you're in. That's what my fingers are crossed for. And that's where you'll need the link to MoveWell, or hopefully you might have a MoveWell book. And so in MoveWell from page 6 onwards, it's got a little breakdown of each of the principles. So what I'd like you to do is, if you're in room 1, if you can have a look at principle 1, if you're in room 2, to have a look at principle 2, and so on and so forth. And just in the room that you're in, have a little read about it, have a little discussion, and be prepared to share a quick summary back to the rest of us about what the key points of that principle are.
Okay, so basically the main idea is that they've just got there as a subheading that playing games is basically the idea that play is central to all learning. They've just put there that through enjoyable, well-designed games, children not only develop abilities and context, they also develop a sense of self, a sense of belonging, and a sense of community. I think the key word there is the word well-designed. And I'm just thinking about my own experiences as a PE teacher previously. Sometimes when things have not gone so well in a particular game, it's been because of the way that it's been designed, and that hasn't given students an opportunity to give their best and to get the most out of the game, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's right. We can't just expect games to do it automatically. When we approach our reading planning, we can be really specific about what we're trying to get out of that, and the same goes for PE. We need to design the games and the learning to make sure that our kids are getting what they need. Perfect summary. Thanks, Anne-Marie. All right. Designing game context, number 2, that was you, Emma.
Hi. So I've just written in the box, children need a variety of game experiences that challenge them and provide them with learning opportunities to develop in physical, emotional and safe ways. As a teacher, they need to aim to cater to all students' needs, create a positive environment, modify the activities, rules, equipment, etc. and to suit the students, and avoid elimination games. One that's added in the book is that they need to provide semi-structured open game environments that lead to positive experiences and a sense of achievement for all children.
Yeah, that positive engagement's really important. And variety is another really important part of this principle as well, in making sure that our kids get access to a wide range. What we find in primary schools is that we tend to hit the same context year after year. And so while over 1 year, there's a variety of contexts, but what we want to do is broaden that and make sure that kids have access to a lot of opportunities. Thank you, Emma. Using good pedagogy. Rebecca.
We just talked about letting the kids choose their game so they have a bit more of an interest and they're a bit engaged if they get a bit of a choice. Obviously, you don't have to do that all the time, but and then with that game, letting them play for a bit, just the normal rules that they would, or the rules that you set in place, and then bringing them back in after they've had a chance to play, asking the kids some questions like, how can we make this game more inclusive for everyone? How can we make it easier, harder? Could we change what equipment we use? Could we change our field size or whatever? And just getting the kids to think how we can make the game better for everyone involved.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there, Emma. Rebecca, apologies. So using good pedagogy doesn't actually look any different in physical education to what it looks like in the rest of the classroom. And so it's just employing those strategies when we are playing games. Those things like asking really good questions and making sure that we have small groups so that our kids can be involved and participating a lot rather than having just one game going on. Making sure it's well planned, making sure that we have the equipment we need. all those kinds of really good pieces of pedagogy that we do in lots of areas of the classroom, and making sure that happens in PE as well. MoveWell is really closely linked to the inquiry cycle, and so we're going to touch on that as well. And they do have this neat little phrase that they use in MoveWell around leave me, watch me, help me. So leave the kids to play, watch what's happening, and then work out where you as a teacher belong in that and what you can do to support and facilitate some learning. Okay, number 4, Ashley.
Hi everyone. So the number 4 was kind of about how the games sort of affirm and validate who students are through their participation in sport. And it just talked about how the activities are inclusive, they're both challenging, but allow for kids to feel successful as well. They're cooperative, they allow kids to have input in the process. They allow for reflection and time out and praise and feedback. And then it sort of went on to talk about understanding in sport what fair play looks like and feels like, and as well like teaching around the skills with all that emotion that comes with playing sport, whether that's excitement or frustration or so it did touch on how we can, value each other still in that kind of space.
Yeah. Again, it's around making sure our kids feel like they belong and they are heard and they are listened to in these situations. And again, we do that really well in primary and intermediate classrooms, and it doesn't have to look any different in PE. We just have to consider what that does look like in physical education, and so MoveWell's very explicit about that. All right, the lucky last one around developing game ability.
Okay, that's me. So developing game ability is about learning skills for the games, tactical knowledge as well as teamwork, and so by having experience of doing these things, it helps with the students' competence and confidence to play other games and to try other physical activities, which is really good for their continued development. So we want them to want to play games and enjoy, extending their repertoire, I guess.
That's right. Yeah, and giving them the ability to play those games and feel like they can belong because they bring the skills and the attributes that are needed for that. Now, that might not mean that they are technically correct in the way they hold a tennis racket or the way they kick a football, but that we give them the ability to be in those situations where they can play the game that they see going on at family functions or down at the park or wherever it is they might come across that. Hey, thanks very much for jumping on board with that. We're just going to tick along because I can see that time is flying. So we're going to go into the structure of MoveWell and how the book is actually put together. So what you'll find is that there are 6 game sections in MoveWell. Again, these are not the only game sections that are out there in the world. These are just 6 that we were highlighted for this version of MoveWell. If there is to ever be another MoveWell, then there would be some other game sections. So don't think these are the only ones that need to be taught, but these are 6 that are identified in MoveWell. Each game section has got one of these, which is a skills matrix. So this is really unique to MoveWell, and it identifies a bunch of skills that can be developed in those games in that section. So this is the one for cooperative games. At the top, you'll see the title and a little breakdown of what cooperative games are. And then it's got this matrix, which identifies skills. So these are cooperative skills. And then it will tell you what those skills are and then what that looks like. So some success criteria that you can use with the students. Again, it's really important to note that this is not the be-all and end-all of all cooperative game skills, but these are the ones that have been identified in the games in the book. And it's also really important to know that negotiation or assertiveness is not just restricted to cooperative games. So you might find games throughout the rest of the book where you want to use those skills, and you can transfer this information into the other games as well. So it's an extensive list, but it's not definitive, and it's definitely not just restricted to each section. So they can be used quite flexibly. Each game section also has a games matrix. So this is really like a contents page to help you find games within the section. So each game has a title and a number, and then it will give you a brief definition of the game. And then what it does, again, unique to MoveWell, is that it actually highlights the identified skill developed through that game. So if we look at noughts and crosses, in MoveWell, it identifies the ability for accuracy and blocking. Once again, this is not the only game for accuracy and blocking, so you might choose to use the information about accuracy and blocking in other games, or you might try to use noughts and crosses to develop some other skills as well. But what it does tell you here is that that's what the game has been identified to develop in its first instance. But then again, you can use your professional judgment to mix and match those skills in games as you see fit. Then we get to the games pages, and in fact there are 2 games pages for each game, and so there's quite a lot of detail in there. The first page is really the what around the game, and it does focus on teaching and learning, not just how to play. So again, it's got the title and the number of the game. It will give you a definition of the game. Then up in the corner there, it's got a learning focus, which will identify the game's skills that are enhanced through that game. It's got a setup and play section, which gives you, recommended group sizes and area sizes and things like that. And then it's got images of equipment as well. Again, you don't have to have the specific group size or the specific area size or every piece of equipment that's recommended, but these are just starters for you to give you some ideas. And if you don't have the equipment that's identified in the list, don't be afraid to use what you do have and modify it up a little bit. So on the second games page, this is really the so what, and so this will have some suggested progressions. Again, this is not something I've seen in any other resource I've come across, and these are just ideas of how to progress the game. Again, they're not definitive. There may be ways to simplify it before step 1, and there may be a whole lot of other ways you could progress the game beyond step 3. So don't feel like you have to move through the progressions in one lesson or over a series of lessons or anything like that. You may have some groups working at one step and some groups working at another, but really these are just kind of starters for ideas around how you could develop the game in a number of ways. Below that, we've got some learning questions. And these are really there to support the teachers around a springboard for teachable moments to drive the student thinking. We've also got this other unique aspect called the concept clinic, and this is really a little nugget of teacher professional development. So it's got the content knowledge in there that underpins the game skill. And so for this particular game, it's about risk. And so it gives teachers some background information around what you would need to support the learning with to do with risk. And so it's just kind of a nice little place to go to get that PD if you're unsure around what to do with the skill development there. And then lastly, it's also got a reflection section, basically a teacher reflection on student learning and where the learners are at and where you want to go to next. So in terms of picking up the book and wondering where to start, most people like to start with the games, which seems logical. But what MoveWell has done has modified and just altered, with permission, the inquiry focus. And we know that the inquiry-based approach is really effective for student learning. And so if we use this approach built in with MoveWell, then we know that we're going to be meeting kids' needs. So for this, we start by scanning and scanning for all of the student needs around what are their needs within physical education, but also beyond that socially, just like you nominated with some of those skills that you identified in games and things like that. So looking at a broader base of what their needs are, focusing in on what's something that we're really going to hone in, because we can't do everything, obviously. Developing our hunch and using our progressions. Where's the best place to start? What are the needs here? Which coaching clinics are going to support me with that? Focusing on the learning, so getting involved, getting the kids to play, asking those questions, using the matrices to help you, taking some action, working backwards and forwards between where the learning's at and where it might need to go to. And then really importantly, coming back at the end and checking, how do my kids go with that? Have they learned and developed some understanding around risk, or do I still need to build on that and use some different contexts around it? Or actually, no, they've really got a good understanding of risk, but I identified this new need that has come out of it. So really quickly, just as a bit of a check, if we've got some student needs, I want to have a chat around what the best context would be to support those needs. So if we're looking at level 1 and we've got kids who are learning to cooperate and share, if you can just unmute and let us know, out of those contexts that are on the side there, what are going to be the best contexts to support their learning in terms of cooperating and sharing? Don't be shy.
Playground games, cooperative games.
Yeah, so we really want to think carefully about it, so that's perfect. Things like cross-country and athletics that are more linked towards competitive nature are not really going to be the best context for that learning. So let's try another one. We'll go way up to level 4 this time. So these needs for the students are around connecting to their inquiry on cultural traditions. So which context would be the best if the needs were based on that?
1, 3, and 6.
1, 3, and 6, yes. So games from different cultures to Aokori, and the playground games based on what traditions happen and looking at that over a period of time. Excellent, you guys are onto it. Here's one without the answers. Level 3, if they are dealing with the effects of competitive activities, what kind of context might we offer our kids if they're learning around that?
Like different sports.
Yeah, so we want to put them in those competitive games, don't we? So this would be a perfect context for games like netball or the ripper that we were talking about before. Athletics could come into that, you know, cross country, all of those traditional ones that we see. If we can make a focus around, you know, what happens when we're in these competitive activities. Just to finish off very quickly, this is a quote from MoveWell around the balance of what we're trying to support in terms of learning. Our role as physical educators is not to coach sports players. Our role as physical educators is to educate our students according to the curriculum. And for physical education, it's around supporting and developing their self-worth and positive experiences and around knowledge of their well-being and others. And so we want to be providing opportunities for learning that beyond just creating technically accurate sports players, because that's not really our role as educators. Now we are really tight on time, but I do want to just give people an opportunity to ask any questions.
Whether there's an online version or only the book, and of course there is the online version. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more, Marisa?
Yeah. So the MoveWell was designed and sent out to schools as a school resource, so nobody got enough books per teacher per school, so that was never their intention. But it is available online through our website. And if you go through into the resources section, and then it's under the primary section there, and you will find the MoveWell one. The link was in the email for this webinar, so you should be able to link through there. There's also a link in the chat box today. But if you still have trouble finding it, just feel free to send me an email and I'm happy to put you in the right direction. But I will just move past there. So this is our website where you can find MoveWell amongst a whole lot of other things. But that's brought us to the end of the session. It was called MoveWell in a nutshell, so it's pretty tight for time, but hopefully that's given you a bit of an idea beyond the abundance of knowledge that's in this resource, aside from just some new cool game ideas, which makes it really valuable.
Yeah, so I think, amazing presentation, Maurice, and being able to do it in a nutshell like that. I've been able to see a full workshop, and Maurice has done a fantastic job of sort of summarising, I think, the really key points for all of you today. So physical education, was involved in the development of the resource, and very grateful to ACC and Sport NZ who've supported that resource, and for the fact, as Maurice has said, it's in schools, but not one for everybody. If you can locate a book and get one, that would be fantastic. But that fact that it is online, it's an amazing resource. Being a secondary teacher for a long time, I haven't seen this sort of resource ever really come out. So amazing that it goes back to that inquiry as well. So definitely utilise it. We would like to thank everyone for coming along. It's been nice. I know it's been a small group, but that opportunity to have you share has been fantastic. So thanks for your contributions too. The Growing Connections and Confidence webinars do continue on. So they are every Wednesday.
I'll just quickly finish with karakia, but again, thank you for being with us today and for your contributions. Me inoi tātou. Kia tau, taurangi Māria, kia runga, i ngā iwi o te ao. Āmene. These are my details here. If you would like to get in touch or you want to know a little bit more, very happy to have a chat with you about anything to do with MoveWell or anything physical education. So get in touch if you feel you need to, and thanks for spending your afternoon with us.